Welcome to Defense Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: Cambodia election sweep cements Hun Sen family's grip on power. France's pot shot at Ukrainian Chicke says a lot. Ukraine downs 9 Russian drones, 3 missiles, Air Force says. Why Zelensky's plea will fall on many deaf Republican ears. Putin appears unstoppable, but even he doesn't know where the tolerance of the Russian people lies, an economic historian said. Cambodia election sweep cements Hun Sen family's grip on power. Nikkei Asia. The ruling Cambodian People's Party, CPP, has won the country's Senate election, the results of which will further cement the party's grip on power. The vote, which excluded the main opposition, was marred by allegations of voter intimidation. CPP spokesperson Sok Isen attributed the party's increased number of seats to cracks within the opposition party, while Candlelight Party officials in Takeo province said they had been approached by government officials and asked to vote against their own party in return for keeping their positions. France's pot shot at Ukrainian Chicke says a lot. Bloomberg. The war in Ukraine is causing weariness among the country's allies, as shown by the recent protests by farmers in Poland and France over grain and chicken imports from Ukraine. The protests highlight the problem of war fatigue and the need for a strategy to address it. The conflicts over food imports also demonstrate the difficulty Europe faces in adapting to a geopolitically fraught world. The European Commission has proposed capping some agricultural imports from Ukraine, but this has not been enough to quell anger. Ukraine downs 9 Russian drones, 3 missiles, Air Force says. Yahoo! Russia launched 14 attack drones and several missiles at Ukraine overnight, according to Ukraine's Air Force. The air defense systems were able to destroy 9 of the drones and 3 guided missiles. It is unclear what happened to the remaining drones and missiles. The attack comes amid escalating tensions between Russia and Ukraine. Why Zelensky's plea will fall on many deaf Republican ears. CNN. There is a simple reason why many Republicans will snub Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's desperate plea for billions of dollars in arms and ammunition. Sending more taxpayer funds to a war on the edge of Europe is incompatible with the America First creed of a party dominated by ex-President Donald Trump. The previous and possibly future commander-in-chief's position is countered by President Joe Biden, who warns that allowing Russia to win would embolden an adversary that could threaten U.S. security. Their likely rematch means the 2024 election is about far more than who will run the United States for the next 4 years. It's likely to decide the fate of Ukraine, the shape of the Western world and the nature of U.S. global power. Putin appears unstoppable, but even he doesn't know where the tolerance of the Russian people lies, an economic historian said. Yahoo! Russia's economy remains resilient despite the ongoing war with Ukraine. Military spending now accounts for nearly 40% of the country's budget, overshadowing social spending. However, it is uncertain how long the Russian people will continue to tolerate the situation. Experts suggest that Russia's economic growth is being driven primarily by war spending and subsidies, with few benefits trickling down to the average citizen. Furthermore, Russia is facing a labor crunch due to the war and an ongoing brain drain. Loss of dignity difficult to witness in Gaza, medical volunteer says. Yahoo! A Santa Fe nurse who recently joined a 2-week volunteer medical mission to Gaza says the experience was chaos. Meryl Tidings, who works at Christus St. Vincent Regional Medical Center, drove to the Egyptian-Palestinian border with a 60-liter backpack full of supplies and 13 days of food. Tidings, who grew up in Albuquerque, has previously worked in emergency rooms and as a flight nurse, and volunteered on medical missions in Honduras, Uganda and Ukraine. She said the hospital in which she worked in Gaza typically saw 50 patients a day but, since the war started, had seen thousands. The hospital was chaos due to the sheer volume of people needing help. Tidings said the hardest part of the experience was seeing the loss of dignity suffered by people in the region. They don't have anywhere to go to the bathroom. They don't have any clean water to wash their hands. They don't have any food to eat. Women, specifically, don't have sanitary items, so that's another layer of loss of dignity because they just have no way to keep themselves clean, she said. Military personnel to quit over housing rules. BBC. New accommodation rules for the UK military could result in a mass exodus of officers, according to a survey carried out by the BBC. The Ministry of Defence wants to change the rules so that subsidised housing is allocated according to family needs rather than rank. The survey, which included responses from more than 300 officers, found that 78% would be prepared to leave the army if their accommodation entitlement was reduced. An online petition calling for a review of the policy has already secured 18,000 signatures. Next space station crew flies to Florida for launch preps. Yahoo! 3 NASA astronauts and their Russian cosmonaut crewmate flew to the Kennedy Space Center on Sunday to prepare for launch atop a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket early Friday, kicking off a planned 6-month tour of duty aboard the International Space Station. Hungary set to ratify Sweden's NATO accession, clearing last hurdle. The Globe and Mail. Hungary is expected to ratify Sweden's accession to NATO on Monday, clearing the way for the Nordic country to become the alliance's 32nd member. Stockholm abandoned its non-alignment policy in favor of joining NATO after Russia's invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Finland, which borders Sweden and Russia, became a NATO member last year. Turkey and Hungary, which maintain closer ties with Russia than other NATO members, raised objections. Turkey withheld ratification, demanding tougher action against Kurdish militants in Sweden. Sweden has relaxed rules over arms sales, and Hungary has faced criticism over democratic development under Prime Minister Viktor Orban. U.S. Air Force member in critical condition after setting himself on fire outside Israeli embassy in Washington. The Globe and Mail. A U.S. Air Force member set himself on fire outside the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. and live-streamed the incident on the video streaming platform Twitch. The man, who has not been named, doused himself in accelerant and set himself alight, whilst declaring that he will no longer be complicit in genocide. The incident occurred as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was seeking approval for a military operation in Rafah, Gaza. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the 6-degree world, bringing you the latest news from around the globe. Today, we witnessed a range of stories that highlight the complexities and challenges facing nations and individuals alike. In Cambodia, the ruling party's victory in the Senate election further solidifies their hold on power. But this victory was marred by allegations of voter intimidation, revealing cracks within the opposition party. It's a reminder that democracy is not without its flaws and that power can sometimes be maintained through questionable means. The war in Ukraine continues to take a toll not only on the country but also on its allies. Protests in Poland and France against Ukrainian imports highlight the weariness and war fatigue that many nations are experiencing. It's a stark reminder that conflicts have consequences far beyond the battlegrounds, affecting economies and societies on a global scale. Tensions between Russia and Ukraine remain high, with reports of attacks and counterattacks. The Ukrainian Air Force claims to have downed Russian drones and missiles, but the situation remains uncertain. These escalating tensions have far-reaching implications, and the response from countries like the United States will shape the future of Ukraine and the balance of power in the Western world. Speaking of Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelensky's plea for support from Republicans in the United States may fall on deaf ears. The America First creed of the Republican Party clashes with the desire to provide aid to a war-torn nation on the edge of Europe. The upcoming 2024 election will not only decide the next U.S. president but also the fate of Ukraine and the global power dynamics. Meanwhile, in Russia, President Putin appears unstoppable. The country's economy remains resilient despite the ongoing war with Ukraine. However, experts warn that this economic growth is driven primarily by war spending and subsidies, with little benefit reaching the average citizen. It raises questions about how long the Russian people will tolerate this situation and the consequences it may have for the country's future. In Gaza, a medical volunteer from Santa Fe describes the chaos and loss of dignity she witnessed in the region. The ongoing war has overwhelmed hospitals, leaving people without basic necessities like food, clean water, and sanitary items. It's a stark reminder of the human cost of conflict and the need for international support and intervention. Closer to home, the UK military faces potential turmoil as new accommodation rules could lead to a mass exodus of officers. The proposed changes would allocate housing based on family needs rather than rank, and a survey suggests that a majority of officers would be prepared to leave the army if their accommodation entitlement was reduced. It's a reminder that even the most powerful institutions are not immune to discontent and the need for fair treatment. Lastly, in an act of desperation and protest, a U.S. Air Force member set himself on fire outside the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C. Live streaming the incident, he declared his refusal to be complicit in what he called genocide. This tragic event underscores the deep emotions and divisions surrounding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the impact it has on individuals. These stories highlight the complexities and challenges our world faces today. They remind us of the power dynamics at play, the consequences of conflicts, and the need for empathy and understanding. As always, I invite you, my viewers, to share your thoughts and questions. What are your thoughts on these news stories? Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.